Develop your skills, exercise 4, development 04. Modify and copy formulas. What we're going to want to make sure we do is never just re-enter the same formula over and over with one different Excel reference. That's kind of a waste of time. Let's deal with updating, modifying, and copying formulas and really getting the most out of a lot of the predictive features that make Excel such an efficient process. Open up the commissions workbook from the previous exercise, and what we're going to do is we're going to start on cell B8. Now looking at B8, look what this references. Up here it's cell D19. D19's way down here. If I take this cell and I use the fill handle to go to the right, it's no longer listing that 101,400 because look, now it's referencing E19 because I went one to the right. E is one to the right of D. That's cell E19. It's giving us 0. If we enter 100 in here, there we go. Bam. 1. Well, 100% anyway. We're going to need to do something different. That reference to D19 is going to need to be absolute. So we select D19, and we just press F4. As soon as we have those dollar signs, a dollar sign in front of any cell reference, whether it's column, row, is going to say, never move this. Now we just click outside. This is an absolute cell reference, and if we go straight across here, it's going to mention that 101,400 in every single column. We can leave those alone for now. Let's take a look at cell C6. Cell C6, we can just modify by double-clicking. The reason we have you do a couple of these different ones is to show you that there's more than one way to get to the same spot. Excel's built a little bit more like a web than a road, rather than this right turn and this left turn, and if you miss one, you gotta go back. It's best to think of Excel as a spider's web. No matter how many turns and strange offshoots you take, you're gonna wind up at a spot where there's very likely a straight shot right back to the center. Picture Excel set up like a web. Tons of ways to get everywhere, long ways, and always a short and direct way back to your comfort zone. And there's usually a direct route to what you need. We can click in a cell and enter it in the formulas bar, or we can just double click on a cell and then use the arrow keys to scroll through and modify what we need. One thing to note when you're going through these, notice this down below, sum, number 1, number 2. When I press the right button on my keyboard and I go through these, you'll notice that it went from sum in bold to number in bold. The bold word down here is the part of the formula you're entering. If we click up here on f of x, you'll notice how it says number 1 and number 2. The number 1 we're entering is C4 through C5 up here. If we just double click in the cell, number 1 is C4 through C5. These look a lot different, but later on you're going to see why it's really important to read these long strings of numbers that kind of hint you along. When you've got a function in a function in a function, this will help you break them down. For now, just be aware that these numbers here are the same as these numbers here. As soon as we've double clicked, we can update this one, C4 through C5. Let's take it C4 through C6. Uh-oh, what did we do? Careful, we found one or more circular references. Take a look at this formula. If we have a total of 4 of cell C4 plus C5 in C6, that's great. But if we have a total of cell C4 and C5 and C6 in C6, then cell C6 would have to have a total of 4 or 5 in itself, which would change itself, so it would have to recalculate, recalculate, recalculate. This is called a circular reference. Anytime we have an addition problem where we're adding the result of the problem into the rest of the numbers in the problem, it's just going to asymptote straight toward infinity. Excel will tell you this is a circular reference, it's not going to work. When we click OK, it just kind of breaks the formula. You'll see that little green triangle up there. It'll tell us the formula, but it says this equals a number that changes each time it equals anything. So we're just going to take that guy and put him right back at cell C5. There we go. Once we get up here, we're going to start filling in column B. Down here, B14. Let's go over a couple of keyboard shortcuts on this one. Just like you can copy paste up here, if you hold down the control key and press C, holding down the control key and then with it held down, tapping the C key, you get the scrolling marquee. That means that this is now on the clipboard. When we click somewhere else and hold down the control key and then tap the V key with control held down, we paste it. Now that the new formula is pasted in, you can see we have B13 times 1 minus D20. And here we have C13 times 1 minus D20. Well, C13 is empty, so anything times 0 is 0. That formula is going to stay there until we give it some more information up here. We've still got this information over on B14 copied, though. So let's select both D and E, holding Control and tap V. And right on. It updated both these guys to D and E, respectively. We can paste that in every single cell in this huge group like this. When you have something predictable where every number is the same except for just this one number on the top, we're going to be moving a lot of our formulas just straight across. It's easiest just to select everything we need and paste it once. Now let's go up here. Let's go up to cell, we'll just press escape to release that copy down there. Let's go up to cell C4 and use the fill handle to fill across. Fill across means that this whole formula up here, absolute B4, times 1 plus C absolute 3. We're always going to reference cell 3, but we are going to let C move to D and E when we copy over here, but we're always going to reference cell B4. Copy this one over, let go, and right on. There's everything we need. Our base rate times this current rate, the rate that we're using to analyze, 2% more, 5% more, and 5% less. That fill handle has saved us all the typing of re-entering everything. What we can do now is just simply select C5 and do the same thing. Straight across. There we go. Much easier to do this than to retype in those formulas, or even try to copy-paste them all in. The fill handle is going to assume that you're copying from the source and pasting all the way across. It will apply the appropriate updates. Let's also do this. Let's fill a larger range here. B8 through B15. Will this really work? I think it will. Drag all the way across with this huge group selected. Oh yeah, that's the stuff. That's really saving us some time here. Now our operating costs, market expenses, everything is what we need. We have our absolute references here and here. So these are the same straight across. The commissions, notice that those are relative to the actual product sales, contracts, and the different rates. The commissions and the total costs update. Down here, gross profit, net profit, and profit versus revenue. Everything has been updated. When you do a large group of data like this, it's best to kind of stop and analyze a little bit, because when you fill in all those numbers, you may want to give it a quick acid test here. Say, did this really go? Did this work? I'm going to go through a couple numbers and be sure that I've got the correct absolute references and the correct non-absolute. Don't get frustrated if this part's a little bit confusing. When we get to really using the workbook to start filling in a lot of formulas like this, there's a learning curve. And the best thing to do is to just throw a few tries at it. Practice it. If you get frustrated, if you get stuck, come back a little bit later. Just like learning a lot of things, this is only going to be tricky at first, and then you're going to start to see patterns. We're each going to seem differently, but as you learn Excel, your brain will put all the different tools that you have to use Excel wherever it needs them. We're all going to learn a little bit differently, and we're all going to learn the same thing with respect to the tools that we have in a workbook.